Don't give me bullshit start over right before we start over because your fault. You don't have a goddamn home.
Welcome back to the Smart Nonsense Podcast, baby, where we talk about entrepreneurship, self-development, and challenging norms. I don't have a home, and this WeWork doesn't have high-speed internet for some reason. I'm on a phone hotspot.
Because this is take number 2, it does have tin cups. I like those.
There's a tin cup, and the glass is always half full, even if this is take 2. Where you at, Pop?
Hey, I'm steady state. I got another month here. My girlfriend's not happy. She wanted to see me, and I gotta tell her I'd rather live apart than live with her in my mom's house.
Girlfriends
I just
will
talked
want
to
that.
Yuri too. He's in Bucharest, and he's like, dude, I got a 2-bedroom. You coming out? And I'm like, I think my girlfriend would break up with me if I did.
Because that'd be me to see her.
She's like, why would you go see Yuri in Bucharest rather than see me? And I'm the one begging you. And I'm like, that's a really good point you make.
You could see both. You could do both.
No, dude, I'm chilling here because the Wi-Fi rips, dude. Let's talk about this, okay? Well, before I forget, I've been struggling with fashion for a while. Hey, I don't normally wear this backwards. I've been struggling with fashion for a while because I'm a sweaty monkey. I guess monkeys do sweat. You just don't see them because they're hair balled out. But I'm a sweaty monkey, and I don't like my pits real tight. And all my shirts are made for like city, and you want to like be muscular and stuff.
Yeah,
I don't like when you're fooling around in the settings.
I'm just toggling some settings. Don't worry, I was overexposed. Come on, sweaty monkey.
So I'm a sweaty monkey, and I was looking for clothes to wear for this podcast as I scramble every episode. I've been wearing sweatshirts without an undershirt for a while now because it lets me cool. It lets me breathe. I went into the laundry room, and I saw my old hockey jersey, and I'm like, look at the pits on these, dude. Are you kidding me?
Right now?
Look at the pits, dude. It's just straight. They're made to breathe.
Looking at that jersey, I know how it smells. I can see the smell from all my friends that played hockey.
No, dude, Carol she's had 2 years just to Drano it out. It smells good, dude. It smells really good.
Well, I'm happy for you.
So this might be my new fashion sense. Living at home, I literally wear the same outfit every day. I just turn into you. I'm like, there's no need to look good for anyone. I'm just in the woods with the animals. I was fucking playing with tadpoles this morning. It was sick. All I do in the morning.
Doing this in the water,
But there were like a million of them, and then they're just spermicides flying around the water. And I'm like, that's sick. The problem was their dad or their mom spooked me. I wasn't going to go play with the tadpoles, but then I heard something jump in the water. I'm like, I got to go investigate. And then I
you know what I saw this morning?
A little bit.
You found we were driving at a fast clip down the freeway into San Francisco, and this Bambi ass deer is running down the shoulder. And it's like 2 months old. It's got knocked knees. It's like doing this and doesn't know where to go. And we flew by it. I hope it didn't get smoked behind us.
Is knocked knees? Is that like a hip problem, or is that just like no one ever told them they got knocked knees and they just?
I don't know. It probably has to do with those toe shoes you just bought.
You trying to transition to my toe shoes? Oh, this is supposed to come in today, dude. Tomorrow. Hey, tune in for tomorrow's pod. You're gonna see my feet with some toe shoes, dude. I like when people spread my toes. Like if you put your fingers through my toes like that. No one's ever done it to me. I'm just assuming.
I'm not gonna.
I will like you a lot. Active service me that way. Hey, on my walk, which I'm stoked about,
physical
and
touch.
I realized
that's a physical touch love language.
It's a both. It's a 2 bird, 1 stone.
It's a both.
It's a both.
All right.
Know what I realized? I wasn't going to talk about it, but I'm such an anti-active service person. I'm the opposite of you, where I just feel the ledge guilt. So like my mom, who's in the room next to me, when she's doting on me, I know in her mind, she's got like the love ledge. But in my mind, I'm like, don't baby me, because now I got this ledge. Like, I don't like it. I also just like, I prefer to just make my own sandwich. Like rather than have people ask me and then I have
Yeah.
to say no 90% of the time, I'm like, just don't ask.
Can we talk about the opportunity cost fatty?
Yeah, dude. 11:13 p.m. last night, I get a
Here's a
little
clip.
holler from my mom. No, dude. I gotta keep. I get a holler. It's like, Dylan, you hungry? I'm like, well, obviously, I'm always hungry, but I'm just gonna have like some raisin bran and a banana or something. And it's like one that's kind of weird because it's 11:13, but that's what I eat. That's my dessert. That's my like go to bed meal. And she's like, you sure you don't want like a grilled cheese with tomato? And I'm like, a grilled cheese with tomato right now? She's like, well, we got the griddle out and it has a lot of bacon grease on it. And I'm like, but it's 11:13 p.m. You telling me you trying to hit me with the sunk cost fatty? As in the sunk cost of the griddle having a bunch of bacon grease and we're going to make food.
But the griddle's out.
The griddle's out. You got to cook, baby. The McGriddle.
So
Great
that's
sandwich.
a Gen Z opportunity cost masterclass.
Oh, true.
And some
Yeah, that's,
cost. The griddle's
if
out.
you're not making money,
don't also make a midnight mac a grilled cheese. It's done.
Right.
The griddle's sunk. The bacon grease, it's over. Throw it out.
I get a lot of sunk cost fatty trauma in my head, and I just eat, dude. I fucking ravage because that's all I spend my money on is just food. Hey, what do I want to talk about? Well, okay, let me like ease into this. All right, I like my morning walks.
Wait, before you ease into it,
why?
Before you ease into it, before just for a second, just for a second, Peter McKinnon had this thing he used to do called 2 Minute Tuesday on his channel when it first started. And the big running joke was it always took him like 10 or 15 minutes. He never hit 2 minutes. And I think one day we'll get into our topic before like 8 or 12 minutes into the podcast. One day. But that day is yet to come.
Nah, dude, people like the foreplay. You got to tease them around and then hit them with the 1-2 right after that. Hey, we'll make it to the walk. 1, then we'll get to the 2. All right, so 1, the walk. You'd always go on your walks in the morning and you kind of like turn me on to this idea. Outside. I'm turning you on to the inside walk, partly because it was Chicago winter and you couldn't walk outside because it rained every day and or snowed, but also because now you can watch a podcast and it's dope. But MFM doesn't release their podcast and video on time, so I just got to listen to it, hence the outside walks. But I love them because it's like I'm a 69-year-old person. I don't know why I picked that number. I'm a 75-year-old person watching my Fox News. Like that's my entertainment is just dialed in. It's like the old dude chugging a beer and just hanging out after work. Like he just wants to relax. Like that's my morning walk is just like, this is my leisure. I like it. And I don't want to do it with anybody. I like listening to the pod and just playing with my tadpoles. That's all I want to do. And I also shoot some tadpole
That's
videos.
interesting.
And my girlfriend, she's like, that's awesome.
That's awesome because I would always do those walks and it was like me time. It was that leisure. It was that dial in the thoughts for the day, listen to something and focus, like stare at the ground and focus. And periodically you or my girlfriend Athena would come on the walk and it was a totally
Throws
different.
it out of whack, dude.
Totally different.
Then
Ours
you got to do a
okay
separate personal
because,
walk.
Yeah, right. To calibrate. Like we could at least calibrate on business, but I get all antsy. You need that alone time.
Yeah, there was I think it was Casey Neistat. He had this little radical honesty thing. I'm gonna assume it's him. And someone wanted to like drive. They wanted him to drive them to the airport or like go on this, I don't know, like multi-hour
His
trip.
brother.
And he's like, oh yeah, like hey, I'll drive you there, but know that I don't want to be doing it. I just want to be by myself. So if you want to drive with me in the car for several hours, knowing I don't want to be there, that's fine. I'll do it. Just know that I would prefer to be by myself right now. It's like that's kind of how I feel. It like doesn't make sense.
I just watched.
Why would you want to go alone? But
I just watched this video. It was on YouTube titled "The Most Honest Conversation with Casey Neistat," and it was by that dude Nas Daily, who did those like 1 minute Facebook videos. You'd probably recognize him.
Sri Lanka.
I've never seen, something like that. I've never seen a more honest like interview. He's just turned into this like cynical, grumpy old man, but he's probably been that the entire time. He just like doesn't want to be there. He's totally shitting on a bunch of stuff. It was really interesting.
Dude, this is okay. Hey, let me transition this into something else. It's interesting seeing the public face versus like the private actions. And I say this because I just tweeted this, but listening to the My First Million podcast this morning, Neil Patel, who's this successful agency entrepreneur, he's like, yeah, I don't really like need money. I don't spend that much. I just got like this white t-shirt with stains. And then literally 2 sentences later, he's like, my burn's like 150,000 a month. I'm like, what?
After Sean says his burn is high at 25,
30,
which I think is high. I said the other day, like I live off like 5-6 grand a month, and we know forecasting like whatever. I was like, at 25 grand, I would have no problems. And then you got Neil Patel at 150 grand a month.
Well, that's where it was funny because listening to Sam, kind of like Sam's also interesting because he got Neil to tease this. Like he teased this out of him when he really didn't want to admit how much he makes and doesn't really talk about that very much. But Sam was like, yeah, I read in a blog post a while back, you said all you really need is like 150 grand a year. And like, that's enough money. But then Neil's like, after mentioning how much he now spends, he's like, yeah, that's totally easy if you're like single and don't have kids. But like, hey, once you got that, it goes up from 150 a year to 2 million a year. And it's like, it's interesting because it reminded me of the Naval quote where it's like, you really just want to make your money in lump sums so your lifestyle doesn't creep up. Because now he's just in this bubble where he's like, yeah, all my friends make this much. So like, I don't know what's weird and what's not.
Nanny, driver, house cleaner, flying private, like all these things. Once you do them, you can't go back, is the thing.
Although he did say he was going to go back to commercial, but that's pretty rare.
Commercial first class, like,
yeah, like how much different is it going to be? I know there
was this Alex Hormozy video where he like lived like the one, he lived like the ultra wealthy or something, and he broke down all the finances of living like absolute fanciest car, Bugatti, penthouse suite, flying private, like all these things. And when he did the math, you needed like 300 grand a year to outwardly live like that. Post-tax, 300 grand post-tax. So like 550 grand.
So here's where there's this danger of the friend group. Because I think I was actually thinking about this before when I had all my...
Our friend group?
Any friend group, like your friend group, like whatever the figurative your is. Where one of the reasons why I like Brown was because, okay, a lot of smart people that are probably going to be successful. So like when we want to go on cool adventures, it's a lot more feasible. Like that's why the rich kids at rich schools hang out together. Cause it's like, oh, we want to go on our yacht and outside the Mediterranean. It's like, okay, let's do that. And it's just a normal thing for them. And it's just like not weird versus like if you try and do that with someone making 50 grand, they're like, it's a big deal or they can't afford it. Just the plane ticket out there. So it's nice being like roughly in the same bracket. But then also like if everyone's ambitious, you're all going to creep together. And then it's like suddenly, oh, I got a nanny and it's awesome. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe I'll try a nanny. It's like, well, how much do you pay him? It's like, I pay him 6 figures a year. It's like, wow, that's a lot. But it's like, yeah, they're taking care of your kids. You want to make sure they're like paid super well. And it just like everything starts creeping up. Granted, I think their lifestyle is dope and it's like the ultimate leisure where he's like, yeah, I'm spending, I forget, he didn't say a number, but he's like, I get this private car. I go through this company and they have this sticker that's like, hey, we can drive and park anywhere. I don't know how that license works, but it's like for literal like presidents, heads of state, where you can just pull up to a meeting outside like any hotel or building and just leave the car there and you will never get ticketed or anything. And then he'll go have the meeting and pop right back out. Probably cost him tens of thousands a month. Like, oh, that's kind of nice. And then you're telling me I got to go back and I got to Uber. Yeah, I bet you did working on that.
Right, like I walked half a mile to get in here.
What do you mean?
You can't go back. If I had that car where I could just park right outside this WeWork in the middle of this crowded city, where there's garbage trucks and stuff and no park zones, like I parked a half a mile away and walked.
Yeah,
You
I
can't
want to
go
talk
back.
about
You
this.
cannot go back. And now it's interesting, and then you can pivot, but we lived in these really nice short-term furnished apartments like the last year and a half after we were living on the floor. And all of our friends are still in the place where they're like kind of living in college type housing. It's like an
Right, our
unfurnished
Zoom
place.
call
It's not very
yesterday.
nice. And I I can't go back to like long-term unfurnished housing for all the like flexibility you lose and niceness you lose. I even went in your building one day with all of the amenities: gym, co-working space, good view, nice pool, good part of the city. And I'm like, actually, you were like, you just can't live anywhere else then.
Hey, I spoke too soon. I'm back down to the slum. They want to do an income check. Uh, yeah, it's. I mean, yeah, once you get it, but that's the thing. Like, I'm happy I have it. Like our friend saying, "Oh yeah, I'm like when my girlfriend comes over, it's kind of weird because there's a wall right there to the living room, and that's where all the friends hang out. So like, I'm glad she got her own place so we can like have some privacy." And I'm like, geez, I didn't even think about that. Like even when we were living together, it was so far apart that that wasn't even an issue at all. Luckily, we had like literal giant floor in this building. So now it's like, oh, I get why people have one bedrooms. And Ice is saying to me, like he's all mad because I was supposed to live with him. But now I'm like, hey, I don't know. I don't know. I don't think the numbers are gonna work. But now I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna make the numbers work, but then get a one bedroom because it just like I don't want to have to do like he wouldn't let me live with my girlfriend, and I'm like, I kind of want to live with her. And he's like, I don't want to live with her, and I'm like, that's a good point. I've encountered that problem before, and you just don't have to worry.
It's kind of
about
like
it.
the Sampar, like it's better to live close so you can separate church and state. Like I would love if all of us could just live in our senior year college house again. That was the most fun ever.
Yeah, you got a
But
couple floors
second
from me.
best is like, yeah, right. I had a separation of church and state. I was cooped
It
up
was
in the
actually
attic.
funny. Every floor like cut the time together in half because you'd spend a lot of time on the second floor. I wouldn't go up to the second floor. I was just with Binky on the first and then waiting for you guys to come down because you had to leave at some point. So I didn't. I saw you probably the least just because you had an extra floor between us. You were in that hot attic. But we're
Anyway,
gonna see now because I'm living
live
in
near
like this
friends.
building right next to you. So we'll see if that's like the right balance. And I want to take that model and take it to New York. But how the fuck does he get to making 2 million, or at least easily spending 2 million a year without a second thought, and also donating a shitload of money? Hey, one thing I want to say before I forget though, there's this problem that I currently have where we don't have a car, or I don't have a car, I should say, and living in a city. Speaking about like fatty sunk cost fatty. If you have a car, you want to use it. So a lot of people, like right now, my mom has a car. So I'm like, oh, rather than like just walk in my vicinity, I'm going to drive 5-10 minutes to these awesome walking trails, which I would have just been too far away before. But now I can go and like see this awesome new site. But if I didn't have that car, I'd have to rationalize a $20 Uber to get there and then another $20 back. And it's like, now I got to like sit in the car with an Uber driver. And so this guy is like, okay, this is the sunk cost problem. How do we avoid this? Well, let's just set aside a certain pool of money at the start of the year, which is like, I would have spent $5,000 this year on a car. And so now you have like a separate account that you just tap into for Ubers. And it like helps dissociate. So it doesn't feel like you're spending 20 additional dollars. It's just like, oh, I have this reserve money exclusively for what I would have spent on a car that now I have for Uber. And so I'm trying to like battle with that, but it is kind of nice having the car because then you want to use it more. So point being, in Chicago, I want to go on more walking.
Well, yeah, and that's
because they're nice.
That's why I bought another Super 73 electric bike, is for that same reason. I'm like, well, I would have spent this much on transport, so let me just buy the $2,000 bike. I'll sell it for $1,500, and then done deal.
Yeah, I got to get another one, and then you can sell it for me, and you take you a little mixed commission on your. Because I don't know how to sell. I just give.
It's so easy. I sold my last one in one day on Facebook Marketplace. So that bike for the year and a half cost me $500. That's pretty good.
That's really nice. No gas money. Hey, so how the fuck does Neil Patel make this much money? So
I don't know, Pop.
Well, clearly, I don't think you listen to the podcast, but he took a different approach. So there's like some people, he has a business that, or businesses that now do over $100 million a year. He said 9-figure business. So kind of, who knows, it could be 200 million, but it's a lot of money. Like, how did he get there? Well, most times when you hear of numbers that high in the hundreds of millions or billions, it's like, okay, this must have been some sort of software company. Because how do you scale anything else to that level? But there's the few that are like the Gary Vaynerchuk, where you just have an agency that will charge the Fortune 500 companies maybe $50,000, $100,000, and just have a lot of.
Yes, sir.
Just have a lot of contracts with the Fortune 500 companies, and then you just like our Fortune 5 million. But so you just have a lot of contracts with them, and then you just end up having this massive company that does just SEO and marketing for all of them. So there is this debate now between the traditional, well, I guess kind of like Sean on the My First Million podcast. He's like the software guy, where he wanted to go build a startup to, I don't know, multi-billion-dollar valuation and then sell it and et cetera. He tried to do that route. Sam, he sold his newsletter company, which is kind of more so the agency, but I don't know. I don't know what you would classify it as. I guess it's media, so it's like separate. And then the people version, where you have Neil Patel and he has like 700-800 people working at his company. It's like, okay, they get into this debate of why would you build this massive agency, which traditionally, like, the revenue per employee is almost nothing. Like, you look at a Netflix or a Google and it's in the millions of dollars, versus looking at an agency like our agency. It's like we make, I don't know, 25 grand a year, 20 grand a year off a person, versus 2 million. So what's that? 100 times more, like 1% of what a Google person would make. So that's the big question. And I don't know, Belky, do you remember like the debate and the pros and the cons of each and where you stood on it?
What I really remembered, I was busy peeing in a bottle leaving the van.
I bet you was.
I remember Neil being like, no, but it's nice stutter, dude. Yes,
Tartamuda.
But he said it's a lifetime value thing. You know, he's like the Accentures. Assume they're like a big consulting agency. They've got clients for 6, 7, 8 years. And the lifetime value of those clients is enormous, versus maybe a software company that's just like constant churn.
Oh.
I was like, yeah, that's kind of interesting. Because LTV, lifetime value, and the average lifespan of a customer is like 6, 7, 8 years.
Right. Yeah, it makes me think.
That's what I took.
This is kind of unrelated because they're kind of in the middle, but take like a SpaceX, where they have these massive government contracts and literally the billions of dollars. Or you take, where's Grant work? Peter Thiel company. It's a dope name. Palantir.
Peloton.
They have software for basically like government intelligence agencies. And it's like they just sell that to governments and big companies. And it's kind of like they're just looking for those couple clients that are massive and years long. So he kind of took the same approach just for the agency, versus a software company might have an average, I don't know, customer for like 10 months and they churn. And it's like really low in terms of what they pay. So it's just a different approach. But I think my big takeaway is, okay, looking at trajectory wise, you have a startup which goes from $0, not making anything, to all of a sudden making $1 billion, $2 billion, and it scales beautifully. Versus an agency, which in his case, it probably grew, like started at a couple million, then went up, and now is at like 100 million. It's like, okay, you're at a pretty awesome life the entire time throughout the process. Like, the agency is just dope from day one, versus software.
Kind of. When you start it, it's your own skin, right? It's your own money, which he talked about. And like, that's good because you're going to be really, really particular about how you start the thing because it's your own dollars. But also we know that was kind of a scary time.
Yeah, but how long did that last?
Relatively,
A year?
yeah. Right.
I mean, it
One
kind of
contract.
just ended like 2 days ago, but in theory, who knows? But point being, it's really short term because we've been doing this for a year and we kind of like we had those ups and downs, but that's fine. We still like both made 100K last year, almost. So it's like, okay, that's just granted we probably would have made a lot more than that just in like normal business world, but like that's out of the box awesome compared to what we'd make at just like our own startup. Granted, I guess you'd take like a salary if you raised a lot of money, but still you can quickly have.
But you're not taking distributions.
Right. You wouldn't be making several hundreds of thousands of dollars as a founder for like 10 years. And then if you're one of the lucky unicorns, like the 5% that probably even less that actually break out and like have some sort of important event, well, you don't have liquid money for a while. So it's useless versus Neil Patel. He's like, dude, I just look for profitable. I want like churning, giving me money, give me the positive cash flow. I want that shit. That's all he looks for. It's like, okay, that's why he can spend $150,000 a month just because he has the money there. And it's like enough to continue like building schools in countries he doesn't even know about. It's like,
Yeah.
I just see that whole 10 years as being a lot more awesome than the startup founder that's like scraping, really struggling, like worried about life constantly. And then once you get to that event, sure, like it's an exponential for a more scalable code company. But Neil's already giving his money away. He's
The
like,
odds are against you.
well, I know.
You said 5% unicorn status. That's like 5% of 1%. 5% of 0.1% that get, product market fit or something.
Right. But here's my point. Even if you are like you're fucking superhuman and you somehow manage to create the best product in the world, which is also kind of nice about software is you only need one idea. It's like one great idea like Facebook is just like, hey, let's connect people and put them in a room. They've just scaled that for 20 years now off of that one idea and it's brilliant. So it's nice there. But like once you make all that money beyond like the Patel point, what is the point? It's like he's giving his money away. He doesn't want his kids to have it because it's going to spoil them. He's like, hey, if they want to be a doctor in like a third world country, yeah, I'll pay them like 10 grand a month just so they can like fulfill their purpose in life. But beyond that, they'll get nothing. So it's like, okay, he's just giving his money away. What's the point of making it in the first place? What's the point of having $1 billion? Like if you're not going to buy, I don't know, I guess Twitter or something like that. But it seems useless beyond a certain point. So I'd rather just have my entire life of awesome income versus 10 years sucking. And then hopefully I'm in that 1% that really skyrockets. But then I'd rather just have a big agency because money's the same to me. Like the money of that agency is the same as having a $1 billion startup.
I'm in the same boat, and I used to think otherwise.
Yeah, what'd you
I
change?
was big, startups.
He saw his first paycheck.
I think, yeah, well, kind of. Like I didn't know agency was an option.
Right.
I thought it was go to Goldman Sachs or start Facebook.
Right.
Until we got into like tech Twitter, especially seeing stuff like Cody Sanchez, I just didn't know you could like have a crazy profitable thing that pays a ton of cash.
Right. Well, that's interesting because you're coming from the. I guess with eBay, that's kind of confusing to me. But like your parents, doctor, lawyer, it's like, okay, that's one path. And then you're like, okay, if I want to be the full opposite, I'll go startup world. But
that's what it was. So I'm selling things on eBay and the margins are shit.
Mm.
So it was like Goldman, eBay business, or start Facebook.
Right.
But apparently there are a lot of businesses in that eBay business range. There are even good eBay businesses, Etsy businesses.
Right. And that's where I think I was actually talking to Yuri about pricing.
I also thought I liked like a lot of people in size. And Casey talks about this in his most honest conversation. But I've come to your point where it's like the fewer people possible, the denser. Please.
2 months as CEO.
Less moving parts.
It's just a lot of things that can go wrong. So it's kind of like, okay, we're arguing two different points at the same time. It's like, okay, you're arguing for the agency, which doesn't scale. You need a lot of people to do it. So why are you advocating for that? But his interesting counterpoint is, hey, say it's a 5,000 person company or a 500 person company. I'm not running it regardless. We have all those like managers and they're just doing their thing. So I don't see it regardless. Like right now, you could tell me Clipped is 200 people and I'd believe you. I have no idea because I just go into my one little channel and I'm like, any DMs? No DMs because no one even knows I'm here anymore. And I shoot my video and I call it a day. It's like, so beyond a certain level, it doesn't matter. So fuck it, have 700 people because that's basically the same as like 100. I think they say at every like, I don't know, they had some different ladders and level, like some sort of, what do you call it? Degrees, like every new degree. So it goes from like 100 to 1,000. Yeah, it's probably, it feels different. But Neil's not even in the company. So he doesn't even know what's going on. He's just like, I just collect my paycheck and I go spend it on helicopters. It's like, okay.
Well, then there are like different people for different roles. So I sent you that thing the other day. It was like your 0 to 1 CEO might be completely different from your 1 to 10 CEO.
Yeah.
And I thought you were very much like that 0 to 1 CEO, you know, with all this uncertainty, just tinker, try things, figure out the incentives, make it simple. I've come in as this kind of 1 to 10 CEO. And I feel like if I can get us to, I don't know, 3 to 5 million bucks a year, if we go that route, then you would just like give the thing off to higher management,
right,
to properly
it's a relay
take
race
you to 5 million plus.
That's,
it's a relay race.
I got tired and I'm like passing it off, and Belky, he got a little bit of jazz in him. He can get it to 3 or 5, double it, triple it, quadruple, and then you got to pass it on, and then you get Usain Bolt.
We're at 1.6.
So yeah, I think that isn't talked about enough. Luckily, more light is being shed, hopefully, with this podcast. It's like, oh hey, there is an in-between. I think the first time you get a paycheck that's like $10,000 or more, it's like, oh, I like that number. And I got that from just being an agency, like working with 1 or 2 clients. That's awesome. Let me just kind of grow that. And that's the most natural thing. I think that's the irony of this, is because it isn't talked about a lot. People don't do it, but it's the most natural form of business there is. Like in terms of just building a normal company and growing it with people over time. Like that's just
profit first,
traditional. And I think I was lucky because I'm surrounded by like my dad, my brother, my stepdad at the time are all entrepreneurs. So like seeing my stepdad, he'd buy a $2 million property at URI, University of Rhode Island, and he'd make like $400,000 a year in profit just from like a parking lot, which does 50K, and it's literally a plot of dirt plus like 20 condos that he doesn't have to do anything to. I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool. That's not a startup, but I like that better than working for Morgan Stanley. So I think, is this confirmation bias? I'm like, I'd rather just have awesome profits for a lifetime. Granted, it's less exciting. Like the vision might not be as grand.
Maybe the vision's not as grand, but like arguably we're working with way more exciting idols than if we had some startup that a bunch of VCs weren't interested in.
Right. That is the beauty of an agency, is if you're a high-end agency, especially, like we're pretty much at like the most expensive personal brand agency that you can have. We're like, actually, we kind of like have this sweet spot of it can scale nicely, but like we'll work with a lot of people that are making several $1 million a year, which isn't like a crazy amount, but they're the most popular, cool creators that you want to work with. And it's like, oh, now we're kind of affiliated. Like Jack Butcher, granted, he's not like the biggest person on the internet, but he's like, oh, boys, like saw you guys comment, just like stoked, good work. It's just like cool being affiliated with people. And that's the best way to get affiliated, is just have kind of like top tier pricing, be really good at what you do, and then everyone knows you for that.
Versus my startup Dunbar, like Jack Butcher would have he wouldn't, if I cold pitched him or something, he'd have no interest. Maybe it's our agency specifically, right, but we can kind of like cater to these different people.
The media agency
and we can kind of chameleon them,
because it's really easy to see and understand. It's just like,
Yeah.
Hey, you see those videos? We make those. I'm like, oh, I get that. Versus you try and tell somebody about what Redis does. Like, oh, it's a database company and it fucking caches things faster. And it's like, what? Like, now I got to do a smart nonsense episode on what the fuck is caching. Caching? 111. Hey, is this inside joke hour?
That's an inside joke.
Not today. Last thing I want to talk about.
Says a name and a dollar amount.
God, she was a minx, dude. What would it be like if you were single right now? I don't know, but it'd be fun. I'll tell you that. What I liked about Sampar, this is my last bullet point, I think.
I'm happy.
Is Neil shared all this stuff that he didn't want to talk about. And I really like Sam's approach to probing. Kind of, I guess I talked about this a little bit earlier, but it's like, how does he get people to admit these things? It's really simple. He's like, he has a rough idea of probably the ballpark they're in. And then he picks like kind of something on the extreme of that and just says it 100%. Like, oh, this is got to be true, right? Oh, you spend like 15 grand a month, right? And he kind of like laughs. He's like, no, I don't spend 15 grand a month. He's like, oh shit, like over 15? It's like, yeah. Like over 50? Yeah. Over 100? And it's like, just kind of like, you kind of eke out the real number by just asking these like innocent sounding questions. But it's also, I'm going to use this where it's like, oh yeah, what do you make? Like over 300 grand? And then just like see the gut reaction that people have. It's just kind of an interesting way to approach it. He did it with me when he's like, no, just like no bullshit. Like, what do you make? Like, I'm not trying to like use this. When I was negotiating with him of a contract for like 30 grand a month, he's like, no, what's it like actually cost you though? I'm just like curious. And I'm like, I don't want to be a dick and like
kind of really
tell him because he's just asking an innocent question. But then he just digs it out of you. I'm like, well, these are my exact costs, and I have rent too, so that's money to me, and I spend this much on rent.
But I actually don't think it's malicious. He's just like curious hustle scrapper.
Dude, let's patent this as the Curious George. You just come in, just curious. Oh no, what do you like over 300? Like pick kind of an extreme number and just say it like, oh, you gotta make this much, and then it's like, oh no, I actually don't. It's a lot less than that. It's like, oh, like a lot less, like 50 grand less. No, it's actually like this number. It's like, oh, there it is.
Well, it's kind of like in that book. What's that negotiation book? Never Split the Difference. He talks about labeling. Like if I'm thinking something, I'd be like, Dylan, it seems like this thing I said has really tipped you off and you're like upset about it. And that gives you two outs by labeling something, by saying it that way. Is you can be like, yeah, that is true. I am pissed. And then I know. Or you say, no, why would you assume that? And I'm like, no, I said it seems that way. That's okay if it's not. I just said it seems that way.
How come when I say it?
So you kind of get the double out.
No, I'm not pissed. It's like, but you're.
Did you say seem?
I'm like, you seem pissed. I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm like, that really. No,
me.
This is.
Oh, just to people. Yeah.
Specifically, every girl.
I don't know what to tell you. Maybe read the book again.
They're not.
That's a you problem.
Oh, what did I want to say?
And
that was one of the things where it's I think I'm in this. This might be dumb nonsense, but I'm in this trap of like we're gonna be apart for another month, and she's like, "Hey, I want to go out, but when I go out, I see people and like I want to hook up with them, like that sort of like vibe. Like I'm not gonna do it, but it's just like it really sucks being apart from you." And I'm like, is this a trap? Because I want to tell her like, hey, if you want to do it, you can do it. But then she's gonna be like, you care about me less because otherwise you'd fight for me. And I'm like, I'm in a little sticky situation because she's like, should we be open for a bit? Or like I brought it up originally, and then she's trying to re-bring it up based on my bringing it up. But then I'm like, oh, you're just bringing it up to see if I bite on that, and if I bite on that, you're gonna trap me on that. You know what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying.
I don't want to bite.
I've also told you a million times the grass is always greener and relationships compound.
Yeah, I struggle with that every day. I'm on the verge of cutting out every relationship I have and then just heading to the woods, dude.
What's your saying? I can always tell him to go to hell tomorrow.
that worked because I really badly wanted to leave that chat. This happens like once a month with that chat. I get really fed up because they don't have the same sense of humor, and I'm like, why are they my friends? This is the most important thing as friends, is they have the same sense of humor, but they don't. I'm like, Dylan, just leave the group. And I'm like, you can always leave tomorrow, Dilly. You can always leave tomorrow.
You can know. Who did that come from?
It came from, I forget where, but they're like,
It's like Warren Buffett letter.
Warren Buffett or Charlie Munger. He's like, you can always yell at someone tomorrow. It's like, rather than have that urge. Actually, I had this other thing I was reading or listening to. It was like, when people just say, like, they raise their voice and they yell at someone, it's like, why are you yelling? Well, just because I felt emotional and I had to yell. It's like, well, if you had a knife in your hand, would you have stabbed them? And they're like, no. It's like, well, you didn't have to yell then. Like, it doesn't just come out of you. Like, you're just looking for the excuse to yell.
Yeah. You've justified raising your voice. I've heard Ali Abdaal talk about that.
He must have heard it from somebody, and we in a grapevine together. Hey,
all of these things come back. Hey, one more thing. On the friends note. On the friends note. Didn't you have some finding? You went down some rabbit hole about maximizing friends, and you can just satisfy friends. You don't need to find the perfect person, the perfect friend. You can kind of, be close to people for different reasons.
I don't know how many.
This is called Other Significant Others in the book.
Hey, we could do a book club on that. Hey, maybe tomorrow. I could do a book club tomorrow.
Yeah.
Oh, wait.